This is the Rebel Call channel. Welcome to today's show. I want to cover more about what's going on at the United Nations Summit because the common theme here is very, very deceiving. And this is what they've been doing in our society, getting away with what they've been getting away with. They sugarcoat everything to make it sound like it's nice, like it's beneficial, kindness, equity, equality. And the majority of civilians don't take the time to learn or read exactly what these people are talking about. They constantly talk about the youth and giving the youth power. That's because they're the ones who are brainwashing the youth into thinking that communism is an equal, loving society. The youth has no idea what these psychopaths are trying to lure them into. And I'm going to play some of the other clips from speeches that were given there and then tell you about some of the fine print that's in writing as far as this pact for the future goes, which is just this. It's laughable if you understand what they're doing and you understand communism and global communism. They're literally calling it a United Nations family and inviting people in to the family. Remember, in communism, your family belongs to the state. The way you raise your children is through the state. What that means is that the state's the authority in your household. The state decides what doctrine you could teach your kids. The state decides what rights your child has versus what rights you're going to give your child. So in other words, if you want to raise your child on the Bible, well, guess what? The government's going to say that's a bad thing. The government's going to raise your child the way they see fit, which means teaching your child all about gender equality, which doesn't mean anything at all to do with respecting women. It has everything to do with telling a boy he could be a woman and telling a girl that he could be a man. And in fact, they could castrate themselves at 5 years old. It has everything to do with the child worshiping the state, because that's how the brainwashing works in communism. The child respecting the state, not respecting their own parents. This is the removal of private property. This means even if you're somebody out there who rents or who doesn't own many things, even the smallest thing that you own, including your Nintendo or your Xbox, whatever you might be attached to, belongs to the state. There is no private property, but these rules do not exist for the people you hear speaking. These rules do not work for or include people like Bill Gates or John Kerry, and they're using the 30 sustainable goals and this development goal for Agenda 2030 to brainwashing you into thinking that this has something to do with the environment. This has nothing to do with the environment. This has everything to do with you giving up control of your freedoms to people who were never elected in the first place. If you read the sustainable goals, I guarantee you 10 out of 10 people will see those goals, and just like if they were at work sitting through a PowerPoint meeting, they probably wouldn't pay much attention to it. They'd be sitting there listening, daydreaming in and out, hearing the sounds like we used to hear in Charlie Brown, wah, 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 wah. Because they see this stuff and they say, oh, it looks like it's presented nicely. They put nice music behind it. I always use the comparison to the pharmaceutical commercials, right? The way that they advertise these commercials for some type of pill for blood pressure or ED, what do they end up doing? They play a nice track behind it. They show a couple holding hands on the beach, and then they're like, well, side effects may include you exploding or combusting in your sleep. Side effects may include 24 hours a day diarrhea coming out of your mouth. Don't worry about it, because it looks like it's a good time and we have nice peaceful music and nobody even pays attention to what they're actually saying. That's the dystopia that we're living in. I'm going to play for you a couple of clips here where we're hearing them talking about empowering the young people. And if you're young, this is what the problem is. The young people out there feel like they deserve to be empowered. They should be empowered. They don't know anything about anything going on. But they're being told from Big Brother, they're being told from celebrities that they know everything that's going on, that they're smarter than older generations. They know nothing about communism. They know nothing about the carbon footprint. They're just being empowered by talking heads who are trying to empower them. And the reason they're doing that is because they're under full hypnosis. And they know that by saying, these old people coming out here saying things nicely, saying they care about future generations, saying they want you to have a say in what's going on, that these kids out there feel like they're being empowered and that their say matters. But all they're doing is repeating what these same people are saying. They're repeating their sustainable goals. They're repeating their climate initiative. They have no idea what they're even talking about. And that's part of the hypnotism that's going on in today's world. So here are a few clips from some of the things that were said there, where if you pay close attention, you could hear them talking about future generations. They're trying to almost shame you in a sense and say, look, we're going to put all these rules in place about how much you could buy, where you could go, but it's not for you to see any of the results today. It's so that we have humanity in 200 years from now, right? So far down the line that we have great grandchildren, and you are going to be held accountable. So you need to change the way you live now. And the brainwashed people are saying, yes, we will. Yes, we'll do that. But if they only found out that none of it mattered, none of it was actually true, is to get you to imprison yourself, they'd feel pretty stupid. But it would take a lot to wake up these environmentalists who are completely brain dead to what's actually going on. It's amazing how much time they spend thinking that they're studying what's going on with carbon emissions, and they don't even know anything about geoengineering, weaponized weather, any government patents, or any government operations that have occurred in the past that involve manipulating the weather. They literally see smokestacks in video clips that the government plays for them, their propaganda pieces, and they think to themselves, we're having problems in the world because there's smokestacks when I drive down the highway. Meanwhile, most of the smokestacks at most of these factories actually give off water vapor, not like the water vapor they claim they spray on us from the sky, which we all know is aluminum and barium. So you're going to hear from UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, among many. This is another guy who gets off the hook all the time, who is a criminal. This man is a criminal. We've seen this man hold hands with Angelina Jolie, rub shoulders with Hollywood actors, and of course, even meet with people like Donald Trump, but he always gets a free pass, right? This is one of the people who's looking to take away all American sovereignty, take away all your freedoms, all for the boogeyman that people like him have created. And remember, all the things that they're saying that we need to do not apply to them. And they were never elected in the first place to make any of these rules. But now, of course, with everything that they're trying to do there, they're literally announcing that the UN is a governing body instead of just a cooperative one. It is a governing body, is what they're telling you. Listen to some of these clips.
It's about turbocharging the Sustainable Development Goals and the Paris Agreement, accelerating a just transition away from fossil fuels, and securing a peaceful and livable future for everyone on our planet. It includes a groundbreaking commitment by governments to listen to young people and include them in decision-making at the national and global levels. And it commits to stronger partnerships with civil society, the private sector, local and regional authorities, and more. The Global Digital Compact is based on the principle that technology should benefit everyone. It includes the first truly universal agreement on the international governance of artificial intelligence. It commits governments to establishing an independent international scientific panel on AI and initiating a global dialogue on its governance within the United Nations. The Global Digital Compact represents the first collective effort to reach agreed interoperability standards essential for consistent measurement. And it supports networks and partnerships to build capacity on AI in developing countries. And the Declaration on Future Generations echoes the call of the United Nations Charter to save succeeding generations from the scourge of war, committing governments for the first time to taking the interest of our descendants into account in decisions we take today. Respect for human rights, cultural diversity, and gender equality are woven into all three agreements. In the face of a surge in misogyny and the rollback of women's reproductive rights, governments have explicitly committed to removing the legal, social, and economic barriers that prevent women and girls from fulfilling their potential in every sphere.
One earth, one family, one future एक कमिटमेंट है। यही कमिटमेंट हमारे वन अर्थ, वन हेल्थ और वन सन, वन वर्ल्ड, वन फैमिली, वन वर्ल्ड।
Well, and of course, at the end of that clip, we hear the word one, right? Because it's all about oneness, right? I mean, haven't we heard that? One family, one future, one earth, one health, one sun, one world, right? You may not realize, but you've been brainwashed most of your lives. We all have with that term one. A lot of songs where they're telling you all about oneness, right?
One love, one blood, one life, one and the world will live as one.
The New World Order, ladies and gentlemen, is a one world order. Everything is one. One gender, one race, one religion. That is the religion of the Luciferian doctrine, which they so desperately are pushing down everyone's throats without anybody realizing exactly what they're doing with blurring the lines between what a man is, what a woman is. This is all strategically being done while keeping everybody divided and down one another's throats. So let me just read to you a few of the things that are in this pact, okay? Because it's really important to understand some of the stuff that's in there. UN 2.0 is one of the things that's in there. The UN on their website tells us that UN 2.0 is all about creating a modern UN family. This is Communism 101, where your government is your family. Newsflash for anybody out there, no matter what party you might vote for or think you're affiliated with. If you're thinking at this point that your government is your family, your political party is your family, then you're likely a communist. And some of you don't even probably realize it, especially the MAGA conservatives out there. This is brainwashing 101. They've been brainwashing people into literally thinking that family, governing body being a family is beneficial to the world, right? A global family, a global community. Community is communism. This is all about the state having control over you and your home and everything in it. And people out there roll their eyes and they laugh it off and they dismiss it. And you can go back and watch some of the propaganda stuff from the 1950s about communism if you want to see what it looks like, because it's exactly what's happening now with wokeism. It's empowering the youth who are completely raised on government and state-run propaganda, which is what we're seeing now, right? We see these teenagers who feel empowered. Obviously, we all look at them and we say they couldn't be dumber, but I feel bad for a lot of them. But at the same time, they're the ones who are standing up and fighting for this same system. They're saying that they want communism because they've been trained to be communist foot soldiers. They've been getting fed communist propaganda from the video games they play, from the fake doctrine they learned in schools, and from all the celebrities out there that tell them how they should live and what they should accept and what they shouldn't accept and what's socially normal and what's not. Social engineering, this is all part of communism. So in the document, it says, halfway through the 2030 agenda, the world is not on track to achieve the sustainable development goals. It is not too late to change course. If we all rethink, refocus, and recharge, UN 2.0 encapsulates the Secretary General's vision of a modern UN family, rejuvenated by a forward-thinking culture and empowered by cutting-edge skills for the 21st century to turbocharge our support to people and the planet. We will strive towards this vision with a powerful fusion of innovation, data, digital foresight, and behavioral science skills and culture. So most people hear what I just read and they zone out. And I'm sure some of you may have zoned out too, because the way that they write these things are to make you think, well, this sounds like a great, clean thing, right? I mean, they're not going to write in here, we're going to enslave you. We're going to lock you in your homes. We're going to depopulate you. We're going to start killing some of you. We're going to round some of you up and put you inside of FEMA camps. What do you think? They're going to announce it like that? But if you actually read the Sustainable Development Goals, that's what it is. That's what it is, because you know what they're talking about when they talk about the climate? They're talking about all human activity contributing to climate change. Have you noticed that's what they're talking about? You notice how they're trying to suck carbon out of the air because they're saying it's affecting just too many carbon emissions in the air? You know that's what trees do, right? Remember we learned about photosynthesis? Well, apparently that doesn't exist anymore, right? They're sucking all the carbon out and they're putting it underground because they're farming and living underground, right? Have you noticed how they're telling you how you should eat, how often you should drive, what type of car you should drive? These are all things that have to do with human activity. And that's what the carbon footprint is. That's what they're talking about here. They're not talking about, well, don't throw a soda can out your window and don't pollute. I mean, that's what the common person thinks that they're talking about. They're like, oh, they're talking about the climate, maybe I'll recycle more. Maybe I'll make sure I pick up litter on the side of the road. They're talking about human activity, right? Humans emit carbon. The carbon they're trying to stop is us. They're trying to regulate our behavior. They're trying to get us to lock ourselves inside. And people used to say that was a crazy idea. But now after the outbreak, there's a lot of people who are saying, all right, they did just shut us down for a while. They did just see how long we would go and stay inside. We did just see a lot of stories that I covered over the years of people who are sneaking out past curfew, who are getting worse, criminal convictions, going to jail for, as if they had, done something to a human being on the streets, if they'd stabbed somebody. There are people going to jail for years for avoiding the curfew. They were studying the data being you, seeing if you were listening to the rules, if you were following the rules, if you were implementing your social distancing rules that they put in place, which is part of what this is all about when they talk about looking into the future, right? And talking about how everybody needs to have access to the internet. Have you heard that? How important he said in his speech, technology is in the future. It's important to them. It's important to them because if the whole world is connected to the technology, then the whole world could have a digital ID and the whole world could be tracked via a carbon footprint. So they could say somebody in Africa who they couldn't care less about, because they couldn't care less about any human, now has to have this technology. That's really one of the things they're hell-bent on. These countries they claim that are in poverty, who are not getting on board with the technology, they want them to have the technology. So they're telling you, like, as if these people can't have the tech because they're so poor, live in such bad conditions, we got to get them the technology. They don't want the technology because they're actually more aware of what's happening than most people in countries like America are. They're forcing it onto them and then telling you, hey, look at us helping these. We're such nice people, aren't we? And the U.S. citizens nod and they go, yeah, that is nice of you. They should have phones too. Not realizing that the purpose of the phone is eventually for the technology to be in you and your carbon footprint to track everything, okay? I can't emphasize enough. When you look at the picture and you look at the stuff for the 30 sustainable goals, just remind yourself this. Human activity is what contributes to climate change. Now, climate change in itself is make-believe. Climate manipulation is occurring. They are geoengineering the weather. This is documented. This is factual. What they're telling you is that the things that you do every day affect the climate. Thus, the 30 sustainable goals and what they want to do is get you to change your behavior. Right? Remember Larry Fink talking about behavioral control? That's what this is. You changing your behavior. And most people go, well, I'll help and I'll contribute. And they don't realize how far this goes. Where maybe in the beginning they just start talking about, well, you could get an electric vehicle. And they're like, okay, an electric vehicle, right? Not realizing that these things are time bombs. They explode. They don't work in the winter. No different than if you don't run your car, your gas-powered car. You can't leave it off for 4 months in the winter in a state like Montana and expect your car to work come spring. You got to run the car, right? Well, guess what with the EV vehicles? The batteries go dead very quickly. Not to mention the fact you can't get very far. But people just go, well, it's Tesla. It's cool. It's the new thing. Then they start saying, wait a minute. Now I got all this stuff in my house, right? And you go, yeah, they're listening. They go, yeah, but they don't care what I say. Oh, and then you have your locks that are smart locks, and you have all of these things around you. Then the government tells you what you can and cannot eat, what you can and cannot buy, which I've covered, how many outfits they expect you to wear per year. Does this not sound like a prisoner, right? How many times do you think prisoners get new outfits? They don't, do they? Maybe they get one alternate outfit when they wash the other, right? But this is part of the agenda here. They're talking about less clothing, making less clothing, producing it, that we have overabundance of clothing, right? People go, well, that's true. We do have an overabundance of things, but that's not what they care about. You got to realize it's not about caring about the climate. It's about imprisoning you and treating you like a prisoner. And then you thinking in your mind that all of this stuff is to benefit future generations. They're duping you. They're duping you right to your face, right? So then they tell you, okay, you can only wear this amount of clothing every year. Then they tell you how many times you could shower per week. Sound like a prison? That's what the sustainable goals are. It's human activity, okay? Plain and simple, it's human activity. So the other thing to note before I wrap up about the Pact of the Future is this thing they call global shocks, okay? The Pact for the Future also recognizes a central role, which means they're going to be the ones who declare emergencies, okay? Not the WHO, the UN. They'll have a central role and a coordinated and multidimensional international response whenever future, quote, global shocks arise. We recognize the need for a more coherent, cooperative, coordinated, and multidimensional international response to complex global shocks and the central role of the United Nations in this regard. Complex global shocks are events that have severely disruptive and adverse consequences for a significant proportion of countries and the global population, and that lead to impacts across multiple sectors requiring a multidimensional and whole of government, whole of society response. People, again, they hear this stuff, they roll their eyes, they don't get it. This is literally saying, look, you're going to give up your rights over to a bunch of people who weren't elected, who you know nothing about, who wear suits, who go speak there and say nice words like equity, equality, and love, but who really psychopaths who want to see you dead and want to see your rights stripped from you, and they want you to live like a slave because they feel like you're cattle to them. That's what it really should say. And that's what it does say. But most people out there, oh, global shocks. Oh, in the event that there's global shocks, right? Well, why are there so many global shocks and all these things happening at once? Because we've given our government sold us out and given our rights up to these corporations. They've given our rights up to these unelected people at the United Nations, right? So suddenly, now we have to fear global shocks all the time. And keep in mind, Bill Gates just mentioned that there will be a massive one in the next 30 years. And there will be. But the question is, why do people with all the advancements in science and everything else they tell us about, right? Telling us that now science could tell us, what a man and a woman, they can't tell us what a man and a woman is, but science tells us that you could be born in the wrong body, apparently. I mean, every day it changes to whatever fits their narrative. But if science is adapting so much, you'd think that they'd say, well, we won't have any future outbreaks and people won't be dying of cancer every single day, right? But it proves to you that technology is not actually helping at all. They just want you to think that it is. Well, they keep you entertained on your phone with things like deepfakes, which should be illegal anyway, right? So the term global shocks and the other stuff you heard them mention, right, about peace and how all these wars are going. If you understood that all these things that are happening, okay, all the wars that are happening are coming from these people who are speaking at these events. They're orchestrating them. All these global shocks are made up by these same people telling you that this is happening, right? And why do you think these same people are so obsessed with misinformation and silencing free speech as quickly as possible? Because they realize not only will they lose power, they will be imprisoned if the civilians of the earth figure out what's going on. Because they're not going to treat them well. They're not going to treat them well and they say, you cost me my job. You cost me years of my life. You put me into a deep depression, locking me in my home. You cost me my marriage. You cost me my boyfriend, my girlfriend, because you were playing games with us, man. You were playing games with us, and you think that we're going to let you off the hook? Well, they know that the civilians will not let them off the hook. And if the civilians start realizing, wait a minute, you're the ones who've been just making up the news over the last decade or so, well, for a long time, but you've been making up the news to incite violence between me and my neighbor, between me and the guy across the street because of his skin color, or that person because maybe their preference in the bedroom is different than mine. But why do I care? Because I don't, and they shouldn't care what I think about what they do in the bedroom, but you're making all of us care. You're inciting all of this? Yes, they are. They're all responsible for it. While they kill you with a smile and stand there and say that it's all about family, right? It's about empowering the youth, the ones who are fully under their control because they're on technology the most. They're getting fed propaganda from every which angle, from the video games, which is teaching communism, to all the TV shows, which is promoting it, telling you that it's sharing and it's caring. It's the removal of human rights, basic human rights, okay? And you won't like it when someone comes to your door and says that your cat or your dog is no longer yours. Or someone comes to your door and says that last piece of bacon you got in the fridge belongs to them. Or wait, you can't have bacon because it's meat, so they got to throw it away, and then you're going to have to eat a piece of grass. And so you won't like it when you realize that what they're talking about with their initiatives is they're talking about human activity. Human activity contributes to climate change according to everything that they're telling us. That's what the fine print says, which means everything you do every day, they don't just want to know about it. They're going to monitor it and they're going to control it, because you're not going to be able to do things. You might say, well, let them follow me around. I don't care. Oh yeah? Your bank account won't work if you exceed a certain amount of carbon credits. In other words, you go to the grocery store, you want to have 10 people over, you want to buy 10 hamburgers, you can only buy one and it's plant-based. And your credit card won't work. And also, when you try to leave the house, if you've gone past your quote-unquote allotted time to go outside because of carbon emissions, right, kind of like a prisoner in a jail cell, well, an alarm's going to go off and somebody's going to come and bring you back into your prison cell, your home. That's what this thing is. And the celebrities are on board, the politicians are on board, and I've talked about the alt-right media who gatekeeps for this by just telling you that it's a climate cult. They don't break it down for you to get people angry about what's going on and say, you know what, this needs to be stopped now. They don't, because the alt-right media keeps you divided in the left-right. They keep you thinking about your next door neighbor who votes for Joe Biden because they're Kamala Harris or whoever it is, because they think that they're a nicer person of the two, and they don't realize they're all working together to keep us divided. While they pass this stuff, while they smile at you and they say, hey, guess what? We just decided we're going to pass a pact for the future. You didn't have to vote for us. We're in charge now. And if we want to declare a global emergency and bring in martial law in America, we can. Because the military works for us, not for you, even though your tax money supposedly funds this whole operation, right? Nobody's paying attention to what's going on. Nobody's paying attention, especially the youth. And if you're somebody out there who's young and you're listening to this and you get it, God bless you. Because you are going to be so important in the future to wake people up and pull them out of it. And it takes a lot for a young person these days to actually wake up. You know, it takes a lot because they're getting hit with propaganda from all areas. All young people tend to be Democrats because they don't realize that they're being groomed by all these celebrities. They worship these celebrities. They pretend like they don't, but they do. They're being groomed into global communism. And the UN's telling you, right, flat out, the UN family, you can't make this stuff up. I thank everybody for being here. Hope you're all doing well. God bless you and your families as always.